Nicholas Hollan. Nicholas is a community outreach disaster service coordinator for the American Red Cross. Mr. Holland holds a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from the University of Cincinnati. He serves on the board of the Westwood Civic Association. He is endorsed by the Democratic Party and lives in Westwood. Welcome.
It's pretty simple what you're going to be getting out of me. You're getting a progressive candidate who is dedicated to increasing the quality of life for all Cincinnatians while maintaining public safety. My background, as you mentioned, is in the nonprofit human services field. That's what I'm the most passionate about. My background has certainly helped craft and define those issues that I advocate most often. And I firmly believe that we as a city have to break this cycle that we're stuck in of reactive behavior by proactively attacking the root causes to many of these issues we're facing. I firmly believe we need a renewed investment in Cincinnati's children. And for proof of that as an issue, look no further than our region's deplorable infant mortality rate, where we have children in Cincinnati who are dying at twice the national average. To me, that is thoroughly unacceptable. We have to maintain the funding for health clinics to provide prenatal care for those mothers and care for that child after birth. But it doesn't just stop there. This issue of health continues over to education. Kids have to be born healthy and ready to learn. If they're not, they're going to fall behind in school, and eventually they're going to fall out. When that happens, everybody loses. This cycle has to be broken because there is a school-to-prison pipeline in the United States where kids who fail out of school end up on the streets, end up in a life of crime, and we as a community, we as a society are all paying for that road. I think we all win if we focus proactively, getting kids ready, getting kids succeeding in school, thereby lowering the crime rate, helping individuals achieve self-sufficiency. And once individuals are self-sufficient, you'll see requests for federal, state, local assistance programs go down. Again, everybody wins. Now, obviously, going into next year, we're facing a tough economic crisis in the city. Tough decisions are going to have to be made. But with that said, I think we need a council who's focused on a long-term strategic plan to grow the city. We're not going to cut our way out of this problem. We have to have the plan in place to increase tax revenue by inviting more businesses, more people to move into the city instead of moving out. And to get there, it's quality of life issues. So let me stop talking. I'll turn it over. I'm more interested in answering your questions. Thank you for the opportunity.
To piggyback on something that you said in your opening statement, and that has been emailed in by community members, to reduce the upcoming budget deficit, what specific areas would you cut and why?
With a potential, as of now, $50 million deficit next year, tough decisions across the board are going to have to be made. Every one of those cuts must be justified and well-reasoned. Now, obviously, we're going to be cutting away any fat out of the budget. There's no question about it, we have to. But I would contend, even if this wasn't an economic crisis, we ought to be critically looking at this spending anyway. Because as a steward of taxpayer dollars, we're obligated to ensure this money is being spent as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So to me, there is no single department that can't be cut. We have to look across the board at every single dollar spent. Now, things like take-home cars, for example, can probably be diminished. That's probably one area we can make cuts. But I think we have to sit down as a team of council members and look at ways that we can proactively move this forward, make the necessary cuts, while still ensuring basic city services are effectively meted out.
I'm going to recycle a question people have heard me ask several times, but I think it's one of the most important ones. Okay. It's about affordable housing. It is a hot button issue for many neighborhoods, and particularly the neighborhood that you live in.
Sure.
Yet the programs with rental subsidies are all at capacity with long waiting lists, and the only housing many Cincinnati residents can afford is unsafe and substandard. What can City Council do, what can the city do to increase the amount of good quality, affordable housing for the residents?
Sure. You're absolutely right. That's a critical issue, especially over on the west side where I live in Westwood. You know, I would attack this problem, like any problem, from a variety of different angles. First of all, unequivocally, I believe everyone in this city has the right to clean, affordable, safe housing. That's across the board. Regardless of income, regardless of socioeconomic background, we all have the right to live in a safe, clean environment. To get there, as I go door to door, subsidized housing, Section 8 in particular, is unquestionably one of the most common questions that I get asked. And I think it's always important to point out that it's a federally funded program that's also managed by CMHA. As far as the city, there's not a lot the city can do. So if the city can't do anything about the actual housing, then my tact would be, let's work to get people in a position where they don't need subsidized housing. Let's work to increase the quality of life, help people obtain the job skills they need to be able to afford housing anywhere in the city. And when that happens, everybody wins.
Mr. Hollan, for years, City Council set aside a set amount in every budget for human services. In the last few years, that amount has been decreasing. Do you think that we should go back to the old formula? Or in these times of budget crisis, do you think it's acceptable to be flexible with that number?
I think we have to be flexible with the number, but my goal would be to maintain or achieve that 1.5% funding. I firmly believe that human services are the backbone, the safety net, the foundation of a successful community. If we don't have that, we're going to be in a lot of hurt. People often talk about what does crime do when public safety funding's cut. Well, one of the things I would contend, what does crime do when human services are cut? I think there's a direct correlation. I think if we have a self-sufficient, a successful neighborhood, built on a solid foundation, everybody wins. And that's one of the things I'm going to continue to fight for.
Mr. Hollan, a big indicator into neighborhood revitalization is schooling. If elected, what is your plan for improving schools for the city, for the Cincinnati School District, in order to keep more of the city's tax base in place?
Sure. You know, the actual running of CPS is done by the school board. But one of the things that I would contend, we often talk about what are the students like when they come out of CPS. Well, I think as a city, we ought to look, what type of students are we putting in to CPS? One of the most important things we can do as a city is promote prenatal care for mothers so they have healthy children, and in turn, early education. I think it's imperative that we reach out to these kids before they're even in CPS. 90% of brain growth occurs by the age of 5. That is the prime opportunity to get these kids developmentally on the right track. And once more kids are succeeding in school from a very early age, the quality of CPS from every school is going to go up. Once that happens, we're slowly changing the perception of CPS. More young professionals starting to have their own family will then look longer at staying in the city limits so they can raise their kids in this type of environment. I think we have to look at these kids before they reach CPS and a focus on early education.
Your 60-second closing statement.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you again for giving me the opportunity to stand here and answer some of these questions. I think it's terribly important that every candidate has the opportunity to take questions, because at the end of the day, what we do is represent the constituents. We represent the residents. And as your council member, I pledge to have an open door as well as an open mind, because I'm keenly aware every 2 years this position answers to you. And I intend to uphold that solemn bond with both integrity and accountability. So let me say again, thank you for the opportunity. My background in human services is pretty simple. What you're getting out of me, a progressive candidate who's dedicated to increasing the quality of life for all Cincinnatians while maintaining public safety. You can learn more about me at my website, which is just my name, www.nicholashollan.com. When you vote November 3rd, please consider casting a vote for me, Nicholas Hollan.